Good morning, I'm Jessica Lovell. Welcome to the Morning Medical Update. Patrick Lamphere hoped that prostate cancer was behind him, but years after having his prostate surgically removed, his doctor in Nebraska said he needed treatment again. But no one in his area offered the exact treatment he needed. Today, we are hearing what it's like to put your life on hold and relocate to get the right cancer care that you need. We'll also hear why Patrick specifically sought out proton therapy, plus what it's like to for him to meet a Chiefs star player. So we'll talk about that here in just a bit. But Patrick Lamphere joins us from Nebraska alongside his loving wife, Jean, this morning. Hey guys, good morning. How are you?
We're good.
Great. Thank you, Jessica.
Good to see you both. So tell us where in Nebraska you are and how far proximity are you from Kansas City?
We're in Papillion, Nebraska, and we're about 3.5 hours away.
All right. Well, we're going to talk more about your travels down here and getting the cancer care you needed. With me here in studio is Dr. Ronald Chen. He is the chair of radiation oncology at the University of Kansas Cancer Center. Also the doctor who treated Patrick when he came here to the Cancer Center. Always good to have you with us.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good to be reunited with patients, I'm sure, right?
Absolutely.
And you've been talking to me a little bit about Patrick and his unique case, and he's just been so great to share. So, yes. Patrick, I want you to take us back to late 2015. That was almost 8 years ago when you learned that you had prostate cancer. How did you find out? What was that like?
I had a biopsy at at the medical clinic in Fremont, Nebraska. And then about mid-December, they let me know that it was positive for cancer. And so at that point, we scheduled the earliest surgery we could. It was the end of January of 2016.
Before all that, what kind of symptoms were you having that tipped you off?
Prostate cancer, you have increased frequency of urination and then some pain, but and then that's the main ones.
Had you been getting regular exams and staying up and knowing what your PSA was, or was this all new to you, foreign, when you heard about it?
I had a few, like I probably wasn't quite as up to date as I should have been on that, but I had some of them maybe a year or two prior to that. But yeah, it started sneaking up, and so he decided to.
So Jean, as a spouse, someone living with somebody who might be feeling symptoms, were you noticing anything about your husband that made you think maybe you need to get checked out?
It was mainly the frequency of urination, but prostate cancer is a little more silent. And so we had been starting to suspect possibly, but the symptoms are not like really, really strong. For us, they weren't before the diagnosis.
So you ended up getting surgery not too far from home there in Nebraska, and we know that every cancer patient needs regular follow-ups. So eventually you find out that you need even more treatment. Patrick, how did you and your doctor learn that?
By the rising PSA. My initial PSA was good, but then it wasn't real long before I started getting a gradual increase in that PSA. And then the doctor I was going to retired like 18 months, a couple of years after my surgery. We went to Florida, so I went to a couple other doctors, and then they ran my PSA, and they said at some time you're going to have follow-up salvage treatment.
So, Dr. Chen, I want to bring you in here to talk a little bit about PSA, and I asked you before the program started, I said, but if you don't have a prostate, if Patrick had it removed, then why would there be a change in those levels? And you said?
Well, so just to sort of explain what PSA is. PSA is a blood test. It's a pretty good blood test for prostate cancer. And in fact, when we talk about screening and early detection for men who don't know that they have prostate cancer, PSA is the test that's used by the primary care doctor every year to screen for prostate cancer. And in Patrick's case, as he was talking about, when back in 2015, 2016, when his PSA was elevated, that was a marker that maybe he had prostate cancer, and that led to his biopsy and the diagnosis. The same blood test is also used to monitor the cancer after treatment. And so in Patrick's case, he had his prostate removed. And when your prostate is removed, that PSA test really should be 0. And if it's not 0, and if it's rising, it indicates that there's still some prostate left behind. And so then that alerts Patrick and the doctors to know that we have to do something more.
Gotcha. So the continued treatment. So are these tests given to every man every year? Or is it just men who are at high risk of prostate cancer?
Yeah, we advocate for screening for prostate cancer and screening for breast cancer and lung cancer just for early detection. And for prostate cancer, the national guidelines tell us that men should start screening for prostate cancer when they turn 50 if you're a regular risk. If you're a higher risk, and that includes people who have a family history of prostate cancer, or also African American men because they're a higher risk. If you're a higher risk, then that age to start screening should be 40 to 45. But for regular risk men, age 50 is when we start screening on a yearly basis.
And what's a good PSA level? What should it be between?
Yeah, there's some debate about that, but a rough rule of thumb is that the PSA for somebody who doesn't have prostate cancer, you're just screening on a yearly basis, PSA should be below 4, and anytime a PSA is above 4, that triggers an alarm for possible further workup to see if you have prostate cancer.
Okay, so in Patrick's case, he had the surgery, his PSA started rising again. So at that point, what were the options for a patient at that point?
Right. So after the prostate is removed, the PSA again should be 0. Anytime it's not 0, if it's 0.03, 0.1, 0.2, that should really alert the patient and the doctor to do something more. Now, we want to start what we call salvage treatment. So we want to start treatment as soon as possible before the PSA gets very high. But the other part of that is when we start treatment early, it's really just a small amount of cancer that we can't really see on scans. And so in this case, after surgery, when the PSA is still relatively low and we start salvage treatment, oftentimes radiation to the area where the prostate was is probably the most likely place where there may be some cancer left behind, and that's what we usually would do in this situation.
So no surgery, you just went straight to proton.
Right, because it's such a small amount of cancer, repeat surgery really doesn't make any sense, and you don't know what tissue to remove because you can't see the small amount of cancer left behind. And so after surgery, if a patient has a recurrence or the PSA is not 0, usually radiation is the step after that.
So there's different forms of radiation we know. Just explain why proton was best for Patrick.
Proton therapy is a form of radiation, and the unique aspect of proton therapy is that we can hit the area where we need to treat, and also protons is able to reduce the dose to other surrounding tissue, and therefore it may have less side effects. And so for many patients, prostate cancer and many other types of cancer, that could be a good option to consider.
So Patrick, what did you know about proton therapy? Had you heard of it when Dr. Chen brought this up? What questions did you have?
Yeah, I had spoken to a couple doctors about the options that I had, and proton therapy, because of the less damage to the exit area and around there, I thought that might be a little better. And Jean helped me find a proton therapy center that was closer, because originally when I had a PET scan done in Houston, it was a PSMA PET scan, and showed the cancer hadn't spread. And then anyway, getting beyond myself, but so basically the proton therapy was the best type of therapy that I knew, and then I had a couple doctors also tell me that.
Well, and let's do talk about that. You said you went to Houston to MD Anderson. They have proton therapy there. You could have gotten the treatment there, but you ended up coming here to KU Cancer Center. We're very glad to hear that. But what went into that decision to stay here closer?
Well, you're looking at like 2.5 months of being away from my family. It'd be very difficult from Houston to come back on the weekends. And I wasn't a big fan of being gone for 2.5+ months. And coming to Kansas City, they also had, after I met with Dr. Chen, I was very impressed by his skills and his knowledge, and he was awesome. And So anyway, I thought that would be a good fit to go to Kansas City because I could come back on the weekends and not just Saturday and Sunday, but I could leave Friday. So really I had about 3 days at home.
Yeah, and when you're going through treatment like that day after day, those hours and those moments count during the week. And we hear that a lot when people meet with Dr. Chen and see his skills. And yeah, they say he's pretty awesome. And it just makes sense, Dr. Chen, to be here with you. But Jean, I want to bring you in because this is a family affair. You're doing a lot of conversations with your spouse. And I'm sure you put on your research hat and went to town to try to make sure that you were finding the very best care for your husband. What was that like for you, and knowing that this was the right place for him to be?
Well, when we came back from MD Anderson in late April, we had a nice experience, but they were behind about 8 months. So we were looking at an 8-month wait to get the treatment that Pat needed. So for about a month, I thought, hey, there's got to be someplace else. And so when I saw that University of Kansas had this treatment and that it was so new, I just thought, I said to Patrick, is it okay if I call down? And he goes, sure. Well, I made the call, and sometimes those first calls are hard because you've just invested so much time. We thought MD Anderson was the way to go, and I made this call, and my first hookup and my our nurse navigator, it was incredible, like every step of the way, and we drove down, and from there it was just really an amazing experience, and we were so thankful that University of Kansas offered this because there's not any other place in the Midwest with proton therapy.
And Dr. Chen, we've talked about that as we've talked about when we opened this center, that people in this area simply don't have the access to it. How important is it? Because my question was, can people who need this treatment wait the way that Patrick would have had to wait it?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the major reasons why the University of Kansas Cancer Center opened a proton center is exactly as what Jean and Patrick were saying, which is we need to make sure we take care of patients in the Midwest. And as an NCI designated comprehensive cancer center, we have to really offer all the best options for cancer patients so they don't have to travel to Texas or Mayo or Harvard to get the best treatment. And so this is exactly why we did that. And so our proton program, we've opened for about 1.5 years now, and really drawing patients not only in Kansas, Missouri, but Nebraska, Arkansas, and some of the other surrounding states, so then people can stay closer to home and get the best treatment possible.
Well, I recently did a story with a young woman who needed proton, who actually stopped her therapy because it was so far from home, and she just couldn't handle it. And then when we opened our center, she started back up again. So it just goes to show how much those conveniences matter and staying close to family. Patrick, where did you stay when you were here?
Since I only had to stay there 4 nights a week, I stayed in a motel in Overland Park, which is not real far.
Not too far. Jean, what was it like being away from Patrick? You guys just going phone calls back and forth and talking about treatment each day?
Well, you know, it was great because, of course, now technology, you can text, you can pick up the phone, and then I have a business, so like I had the flexibility to go down a couple of times, and but it was really wonderful when he'd come home on Fridays, because then we could make the most of our weekends and we could kind of keep things intact on the home front too. And so it gave Pat really great emotional support without being so far away. And then the emotional support at the Proton Center with everybody was of course amazing. And it went really, really well.
Yeah, you got some pretty cool support from the Chiefs. I have to ask you about when you met Chiefs. Well, he was a rookie back then, just kind of an unknown rookie, and now he's a pretty big darn deal. But Isaiah Pacheco came, met you all, and also Dr. Chen. What was that like in that moment, knowing that he came to see you specifically, Patrick?
Yeah, that was really nice. He was a very compassionate person, and I enjoyed his visit. And he had some touching stories about one of his grandmothers that had died of cancer, and he was just a very nice person.
Yeah, well, I know, Gene, you're a huge Chiefs fan. What was that like? And I do remember he was quite shy. He was so new to the area, new to the Chiefs, and but he did share that story about somebody in his family being touched with cancer, and so it was really important to come out and support you all. What was that like, Gene?
It was amazing because I'm kind of the football person in the family, and when Pat called me after Dr. Chen asked him to do that, we had a little bit of drama because Pat said no at first because he wasn't sure what he was getting into, and I said, "What?" I'm like, "You called Dr. Chen right back up." I totally overreacted. Anyway, so he did, and then I got to go down that week, and it was really fun watching Pat and Isaiah walk with Dr. Chen. Dr. Chen was kind of leading the way, and then they would get to talk a little bit, and it was just such a wonderful experience.
And I was trying to put the damper on you meeting Isaiah. I cannot believe it. Yeah, that was so fun. And I think it was like the week before he had made this big, huge play. And it was like, who is this guy? Do you remember that, Gene?
I do. I was sitting in the apartment that night. We had started renting an apartment for the 4 weeks before, and I was watching the game. I think Pat was probably sleeping or something. It was on a Sunday night, and I said, "Wow!" I said, "This new rookie." I said, "He's really something." And then I said, "I wonder who." And then I started like thinking, "I wonder who we're going to meet on Tuesday." And we didn't know, and it didn't really matter. And there he was after this awesome game.
Yeah, right. There he was then, and now here he is now. So lots have happened. Dr. Chen, how do these moments and meetings happen? We of course partner with the Kansas City Chiefs, but how does it come about to have them actually come here, tour our facility, meet with you, meet with our patients?
Yeah, I think the University of Kansas Health System and the Cancer Center, this partnership with the Chiefs has really been incredible because the Chiefs would do these community outreach events to raise awareness about cancer on a yearly basis. There's one game every season that dedicated to the crucial catch to raise awareness about all different sorts of cancer. And they have these outreach events where they come and tour the Cancer Center, again, to raise awareness and meet patients and hear the stories. This has really been an incredible partnership. And I actually think this partnership leads to better understanding of cancer, the importance of screening, importance of treatment. And I think it actually saves lives.
Patrick, what is the cancer status right now? How are you doing? How are you feeling?
Doing great. So far, I've had good results. No rise in, zero PSA, and everything's going good so far. And I'm starting to get back to my strength and everything else. Doing good.
Well, you're going to need your strength because I hear you two have some grandkids you need to take care of and be around for. What's it like to know that you're going to be around many, many more years to be with them?
Oh, I'm very thankful that for everything, and it's a lot goes through your head. It seems like you're given a second chance, and so it's a blessing. Yeah.
Well, be sure to ask your questions. You can use the chat on YouTube or Facebook. You can tweet us or email the Medical News Network. The information is right there on your screen. And speaking of the Chiefs, a quick big shout out to these three health system doctors, Paul Schreppel, Luke Thompson, and Brian Vopat. They were with the Kansas City Chiefs for their game in Frankfurt, Germany this weekend. Hawk, I know I got up early yesterday. It helped to have that extra hour of sleep on the same morning that the Chiefs were playing at 8:30 in the morning. So did you do Chiefs and coffee? How did that work for you?
Oh yeah, coffee, of course, coffee every morning. Yeah, it wasn't too early thanks to falling back for sure, but sleeping in till 7 is really sleeping late for me, so it was all good.
It was good, a good game. It was worth getting up for.
Yeah, the second half could have been a little bit better, but at least they got the win. That's
keeping
the important
it interesting.
thing.
Keeping it interesting. They didn't go over there for just to have a blowout, so kept it fun. Okay, so let's talk COVID real quick.
Yeah, 15 active patients in the hospital right now, so good. Under 20, the least amount of patients in the hospital with active COVID is really the best. We saw kind of a peak of 22 a couple weeks ago, down to 15 active, so that is very good news as well.
All right, so I want to ask you about a new study that looked back at the pandemic and then tried to estimate how many lives were saved by the first COVID vaccines. More than 2 billion people were vaccinated in an 8-month span from 2021. From January to August. Study authors called it the largest public health campaign in history They estimated that the vaccine saved more than 2.3 million lives globally in those first 8 months. Do you feel that's a fair estimate?
Yeah, it's really hard to get these estimates. I think this group did a very good job of trying to collect the data. They collected data from 41 or 43 different countries, and that was like 1 point something million lives saved with the vaccines for that 8 months that you talked about in 2021. And then they extrapolated that to 141 countries, and that's where they came up with the numbers. So I think it's a very good article. You are using estimates, of course, but I think it just shows the overall impact of the good that the vaccine has done and continues to do. Of course, we are in a different time period now than we were when there was no immunity, no individual immunity, no group immunity, and of course, no immunity from vaccination. But I think it's a very good study. It continues to support the fact of how effective these vaccines were in protecting people's lives and in keeping people safe.
All right, Hawk, thanks so
Yeah.
much. Let's get to some questions from our viewers on this Monday. Yen wants to know, what's the difference, Dr. Chen, between proton and photon therapy when treating prostate cancer? Any difference, and what are they?
Right. So, photon therapy is a regular type of radiation that's available at most facilities, and proton is a specific type of radiation that uses a different particle called protons. And the difference with protons is that it's able to reach a certain tumor and then be able to stop at that particular part of the body and with no dose beyond that. And that's really the ability to then spare normal tissue and possibly reduce side effects for patients.
Also, another question, oral chemotherapy as a treatment option for prostate cancer, and how does that differ in effectiveness when compared to proton?
So chemotherapy is not often used for prostate cancer until the very end stage. So for patients who are at end stage with metastasis, and when we run out of other options, chemotherapy is used in prostate cancer in that circumstance. But for early stage, chemotherapy is not used. Now, what is used in early stage prostate cancer is hormone therapy. So we often use hormone therapy with radiation, for example. And hormone therapy is drug that we give patients to suppress their testosterone, which is a way to treat prostate cancer. Usually the hormone therapy is given by injection, but nowadays there's also an oral option for hormone therapy, and it does the same thing, which is suppress testosterone. It is one of the options that patients can have these days.
Patrick, Brendan wants to know if you had any side effects from the proton therapy.
Really didn't have too much. I mean, initially when I had it, I think I had to get up more at night, but just that's during the treatment. But afterwards, I didn't. I think it was actually, I was very surprised. There was very minimal amounts of side effects. I mean, I was staying in Overland Park and I was going walking every day. And didn't notice any difference. I mean, it was awesome.
Good, that's what we like to hear.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, I mean, at our clinic in radiation oncology at University of Kansas, every prostate patient, when they come in, we give them a symptom survey. So we actually, on a weekly basis, measure how much the urination symptoms are and maybe bowel symptoms. And in Patrick's case, as he was just saying, in urinary symptoms, we give them a survey and it goes from 0 to 35, 35 being severe symptoms and 0 being no symptoms at all. Patrick's score went up maybe 2 or 3 points during the whole course of proton therapy, so he had mild symptoms, only a couple of points up from baseline. And then now that he's a year out, looking at his most recent survey, he's actually back down to his normal. And so that's been really great. And I think he had no bowel symptoms from the treatment at all.
Dr. Chen, Stuart wants to know, is there any way to predict if radiation will cause a second cancer?
That's a very good question, and many patients ask that. So any form of treatment for prostate cancer, whether it's surgery or radiation, proton therapy, any form of treatment can have severe side effects, and sometimes severe side effects from surgery or radiation. And one of the side effects of radiation is the risk of a second cancer. Now, it's a very rare side effect. What I usually tell patients, there's been lots of studies looking at this, when a patient gets radiation for prostate cancer, there may be a less than 1% risk of a secondary cancer over the next 20 years or so. So very rare side effect over a long span. And I usually tell patients that's probably the worst side effect possible from radiation, but every treatment has potential side effects.
We hear the word metastatic when it comes to many different types of cancers. Is prostate one of those? Should Patrick's cancer be considered metastatic?
Well, the definition of metastatic is if the cancer has spread to other parts of the body. So it's either contained and staying local or metastatic when it's spread to other places. Patrick's case was not metastatic. We did, as he was saying earlier, he had a PSMA PET scan to look for metastasis. It looked great. There's no metastasis. His cancer was believed to be local, and therefore we were able to offer him treatment with the intent to cure.
And last questions from Heidi. Just, do people have to fight insurance companies to get proton therapy?
There are some insurance companies that are more likely to deny proton therapy coverage. On the other hand, that's really not something the patient has to deal with. You know, the patient can come in if we recommend proton therapy as the best treatment for them, and if the insurance denies it, our team will take care of the appeal process. We know how to do that, and if we believe proton therapy is the right thing to do, we will get that denial overturned.
And my last question is just about, we talk a lot about the power of a second opinion on this program, and just the idea that they had been to one center known for proton therapy. They came and met with you. What is the importance of finding that balance and getting some of those answers and then making their decision? Yeah,
well, I think to one of your earlier points, for a cancer, we don't advocate delaying treatment, and so going to a place and if there's a wait list of 8 months or so, that's not something that we would advocate. So in this particular case for Patrick, getting a second opinion means that he was able to get treatment earlier without delay, which of course increases his chance for cure. But there's many good reasons for second opinion. There are many facilities that don't have a proton option, and so getting a second opinion to hear about all the available options, and some of the ones may be the best option for a particular patient, learning about that and being able to pursue that would be huge for a cancer patient. Yeah, thanks for driving that point home. I want to get our takeaways today. Dr. Chen, what do you want folks to take away from this particular conversation? I think, first of all, I want to thank Patrick and Jing for sharing their story. This is really powerful and I think really helps patients. The point I really want to drive home is that if a patient has had surgery to remove the prostate, afterwards a PSA should be 0. And if it's not 0, they should really pursue a consultation or a second opinion to see if there's more treatment that's necessary. There's no arbitrary cutoff. Some people say, well, I need to wait for the PSA to reach 0.2 or 0.4 or 0.5. There's no arbitrary cutoff. The PSA should be 0 after a surgery. If it's not 0, we need to figure out what's happening and maybe do something about it. Dr. Chen, thank you so much. Great information today. Patrick, what do you want folks to take away from your story?
Just that, like Dr. Chen said, make sure you get your treatment when you should, and get regular checkups every year and follow your doctor's advice with that. Great. Jean, from a partner's perspective, what's the takeaway?
One thing that Patrick did really well was he looked at all the options and was very proactive in seeing what was best for him. And thus we ended up with the best possible care for his situation. And for that, we're very thankful.
Jean, Patrick, thank you so much for sharing your story. We really appreciate it. And thanks to all of our viewers for being with us today. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 8. Coming up tomorrow on the Morning Medical Update, Gary Shorman loves his Harley and the open road. And his message is simple: stay alive to ride. I'm Jessica Lovell on the next Morning Medical Update. The cancer survivor shares what he did and wants every man to do that likely saved his life. Tuesday at 8.
Subscribe to our Morning Medical Update and Open Mics with Dr. Stites podcasts. Now, everywhere podcasts are available.